would like to see us asking people who don't believe in gods to choose to self-identify as atheists publicly, because I think that it is only by reasonable people seen to be acting reasonably under the label of atheism that the stigma that is attached to that label will gradually be dissipated. I think there are two challenges that I've come across when asking people who don't believe in gods to publicly identify as atheists. One is the mistaken belief that atheism is about certainty. Some people believe that atheism is a definitive truth claim in the way that religious truth claims are. And it's important to point out that it's not, that atheism is a position based on the currently best available evidence, and that to make an assertion on that basis does not mean that you're claiming that you couldn't possibly be wrong. That if you hear new evidence that changes your mind, you're quite open to changing your mind. And identifying and self-identifying as an atheist does not require that type of claim of certainty that religious organisations do, and that it's a false position to suggest that atheism is a faith position in the same way that religious truth claims are. The other challenge to enabling people who don't believe in gods to comfortably self-identify as atheists is the belief that agnosticism is some sort of middle ground between atheism and theism. The belief that there's a scale with atheism at one end, you don't believe in gods, and theism at the other end, that you do believe in at least one God. And that somewhere in the middle of that scale there's a sort of safe position of agnosticism, which is saying, well, I don't really know, I'm not taking either position. But that's not the relationship between the idea of agnosticism and the ideas of atheism and theism. Atheism and theism are assertions about what you believe or don't believe. Agnosticism is an assertion about claims to knowledge. It's a different type of claim. You can believe that there is a God and yet not claim to know that there is a God, and thereby be both an agnostic and a theist. You can believe that there are no gods and at the same time not claim to know that there are no gods, and thereby be both an agnostic and an atheist. If you want to talk strictly philosophically, you should say that you're agnostic about everything. And that's nothing to do with the nature of the evidence, it's to do with how we evaluate evidence. If you say that you claim to know something, what you're essentially saying is that you believe that your thoughts about it correspond to reality. Now that's an assertion about something that's happening in your mind. Now if you want to test the reliability of your mind in coming to this conclusion, the only mechanism ultimately that you have to test the reliability of your mind is your mind. So you've got a circular thing there going on that makes it impossible in strict philosophical terms to be absolutely certain to say that you can know anything. But that's speaking in strict philosophical terms. In ordinary day-to-day language, people will say that they either know or believe things based on their experience of life. If I toss a coin here and hide it, and say to you, do you believe it's heads or tails? Then that's a claim that you can genuinely say, look, I've literally no information to go on. I can't come down on either side in either knowledge, claims to knowledge, or claims to belief. But on assertions where there is available evidence, however incomplete it may be, you do inevitably come down on one side or another. If I make the assertion to you, as David Icke might, that President George Bush and Queen Elizabeth were blood-eating space lizards, you either believe that to be true or you believe it to be false. You're not really 50-50 on it. Now you may believe it or disbelieve it with a large degree of doubt or a small degree of doubt, or with a large degree of certainty or a small degree of certainty. But you inevitably come down on one side or another to some extent because of your experience of life and because of how you compare the assertion with how you understand the world to operate. And it's essentially the same with the question of gods. The agnosticism answer, while accurate, I'm not disputing that it's accurate, but it's a distraction from the question of whether you believe or don't believe, because it's answering a different question, which is whether you claim to have knowledge. So, on the basis of those two issues, I think it's important that we should be asking people who don't believe in gods to consider self-identifying publicly as atheists, particularly when they're campaigning on issues relevant to the type of things that we're talking about at this conference.